Hi, it's Jo from Minerva. I'm going to be taking you through some tutorials on shirt skills. We'll split them up into a few different tutorials because there's quite a few processes in making a shirt. You've got collars, plackets and button bands, cuffs, the cuff opening, hem bands sometimes if you've got different length front and back to your shirt, or a very curved hemline. So today we're going to have a look at making a placket and making a hemband. This pattern was from New Look 6449, which is actually a shirt dress, but I made view D and just hacked it into a shirt just so that I could practice some of my shirt skills before I chose my actual shirt pattern that I really want to have a go at. But I want to show you this one here, which is a popover placket. It's a half band, and out of all of the placket button bands, it's the most difficult. A full button band isn't too difficult. If you follow the instructions, you're cutting a straight piece and you attach it and fold it over the raw edge. So this one isn't complicated. This one's a little more tricky. This is a concealed button band, so the buttons are on the inside. You sometimes see it on a rugby shirt. But again, if you follow the fold lines and instructions, that one's not too difficult. This one is more tricky and an intermediate one, because you've got to work out how to finish that end piece. These two run off the end, so you just sew right to the end. But this one's slightly trickier because you've got to layer them up on top of each other. So I'm going to show you this placket, and then here, because these hem bands on this dress have a really big slit up the side, then they have hem facing, so I'm going to show you that as well. I am making an assumption about you that if you are attempting a shirt with a placket, then we're not going through all cutting out. So I've cut all the pieces out. I've got a little tip for you. If I'm using a plain fabric that's not easy to tell the right or the wrong side, I do put a safety pin facing me, and I know that that's the wrong side, because if I was wearing a top, I wouldn't want a safety pin showing on the outside. So if I was putting a safety pin on a shirt just to hold it together because my button had dropped off, I would put the safety pin on the wrong side. So I use that to tell me that this is the wrong side of the fabric, because sometimes it's quite difficult. You might start sewing things together and it's quite hard on here to find which is the right and the wrong side. So I use a safety pin to mark that. I've marked out the placket band with a pencil. I've used my favourite marker tool. You can change the colours on this. So rather than using quite a dark blue, I've just used, I can't do it left-handed. So I've just used a peachy coloured one so that I can see it, but I know it's going to wash out afterwards. Quite a sharp tip, because we're marking quite accurate lines to get the button placket to lie flat. These are the placket pieces. This is the piece that if you're making a placket, you need to spend the most time and care. I actually did this on a different day, and after I'd done it, I really felt like I'd done quite enough sewing for the day and put it away. So this has a lot of fold lines on it. So there's a fold line that you're going to press. So if I mimic it with the paper, there's a space where there needs to be some interfacing, so you're going to measure that, and then that's going to fold in, and that's got the buttonholes to mark on it. There's a press line on this side. There's a space to put some interfacing, which is marked, and then you're going to fold this side in. And then there's the centre line, which is going to be the slit. So you've got to mimic that in fabric. And so you need to be marking very carefully with your marking tool, or something that's washable, something that will come out. And I've got my safety pin, look, to show the wrong side so that I make sure I put the interfacing on the wrong side. I've marked the placket opening. I've marked the spaces for the interfacing and where it's going to fold, so I can totally mimic what it's asked me to do on this pattern piece. I'm now doing on this piece of fabric. Just going to show you how I marked it because there's so many markings. This is a piece of scrap fabric, just so I can show you. This is a piece of carbon tracing paper. It's got like a sort of sticky carbony texture on the back and a white side. I'm going to use the end of a paintbrush or any sort of tip that I can add pressure. You could use a tracing wheel if you've got a tracing wheel. And I'm going to trace the pattern markings through the tissue. You could put some pattern weights on as well to hold it in place, but I just want to show you how it works. So when I want to really make these fine lines tracing, let's try this one here too. It draws it out onto the paper, and it's only faint, you probably can't see it on there, but I can see the yellow lines. So then I can match all of that up, and then I absolutely know that when I fold this in, like I have on here on my real item, that's how I got those yellow lines, by doing this tracing method with carbon dressmaker's paper. I'm going to match up the centre line of my placket with the centre line of the placket line on the top. I'm going to make sure that's really lined up, and then I'm going to pin it in place and then get ready to make my first line of sewing. So I'm just going to pin it in. I'm going to be sewing around here, so I don't want any pins in that area because I'm going to be sewing along that yellow line that I've just marked with carbon paper. So I've sewn down here, done a clear pivot at the corner, turned and then come back up again. And now we're going to cut through both layers along that centre line, so you can see why all the markings are really crucial. And I'm just going to use my smaller scissors from this set to get right into the corner because they've got nice tips on. These Janome scissors have got really good tips on for getting right in the corner, and you can't snip the seam line. You can put a little bit of fray stop at the end of there, which is a sort of type of fabric glue, which is quite good if you're making a V-neck and you snip right down to the V. You might want to put a little bit of fray stop here and here. So we've got the wrong side of the fabric touching the right side of the placket. Turn the placket to the right side of the fabric, and you'll know at this point whether your little clips into the corners are strong enough or not. So now we have the right side of the blouse showing because I can't see the safety pin. Okay, I'm going to work with the shorter side. I'm going to fold the outside edge down to conceal where we sewed our centre, like this. I'm going to pin it. We're going to top stitch it in place, and I'm going to mark where to stop. I want to stop where I snipped the triangle corner. So I'm going to mark, I'm not going to sew that right to the end, I'm going to sew it to where I snipped that corner. Pin that in, and then I'm going to go and sew that top stitch, that 3mm in from the edge. So this side is sewn down, and now we're going to do the same with the right side. I'm going to tuck the seam allowance in and fold it over, and now you can see how that stacks up now on top of that, and this is going to be your right side, and you can see where, well, I can see where the button hole markings are. I can see that that sits entirely on top of the placket below, and I have got this little tail to deal with at the end. So there you are, not as difficult as you maybe thought. It's all in the marking, it's all in the preparation, because really you're sewing that on, folding it over and top stitching it on with all the seam allowances that were shown in the marking. And then you do the same with the longer one, and that sits on top. And then all you've got to deal with now is enclosing the little clips at the end. So you're going to fold those in with an iron, and then you'll top stitch, joining that onto these top stitching lines you've made here. There we are, Popover Placket. So you make either an inverted pleat or a box pleat, which means you're seeing that side on the outside. Remember, I'm using my little safety pin method. This is the yoke, so this is the wrong side because I can see the safety pin. And we're going to pin the right side to right side together and sew along this yoke seam, and then I'll show you the next bit of the burrito method. And what it does is it encloses all the seams inside so that you don't have a seam on the inside of your shirt. All of your seam allowances are enclosed. So I've sewn that on, and now I've cut my other one out of plain white so that you can see what I'm doing with two different yokes. So I've put this yoke right sides together, and now I'm going to put the second yoke on the other side with the wrong side. So now we have yoke, blouse, yoke. So you've sandwiched the shirt between the two yoke pieces, and now I'm going to sew along there. I'm going to follow the stitch line that I did before quite carefully on the machine. So the next part, you need to try and lay out your fabric so that it looks like the picture in the book. So you want to have this piece of yoke here, so that says bottom, this says bottom. You're going to have this piece of yoke here which says top, and I've labelled that as top. So I've written it on with some chalk just so that we can be sure that we're following the same thing. The next piece of information in the instructions is the bit you have to read sort of over and over again, because you need to get your right sides and your wrong sides in the right places. So you need to put the right side of your yoke against the wrong side of your front, and then you sew it at the shoulder seams. The next part I'm actually going to read straight off the pattern because it's the bit that makes sure that you roll it up in the right way. So you lay the shirt on a flat surface with the front facing up. So this is the front of my blouse, this is the front with the little placket on. The back yoke should be unfolded, so all of this back is unfolded and laying on the table, and that is touching the table behind. And then it says to roll the back and the front shirt together towards the shoulder seams, leaving the yokes free. So there we are, you should be able to see we've got the outsides, we've got the shoulder seams free to join together, and we've got our burrito sausage in the middle. We're going to fold them up and pin them together. I'm going to take it over to the machine, and we're going to sew across the shoulder seams, and then I'll show you how to turn it out, and then you'll see what the burrito method is trying to achieve, that all the seams are enclosed. Here it is, the little sausage, and then you've got to try and get that roll piece through the neck, and you get a bit of a big reveal. So you pull it all through, and we can check our right sides and wrong sides, because obviously I use that different coloured piece of yoke, so a plain piece of yoke. So you will see that on the back right side we have the inverted pleat and the right side of the fabric. When we turn it round, we have the right side of the shirt because we've got the placket front here, and then we have that plain piece on the inside that shows that that's the lining piece. You don't need to do that, I just did it so that I could try and show you the pieces. So what does it achieve? Well, it means this is the shoulder seam, so there's nothing inside at all, and this is the yoke seam, so this is all encased as well. So it makes for a really, really neat top. I'm going to press that yoke down on the back, and you can top stitch across that yoke line as well, which makes for a really neat finish. And then you should have all your layers, because you match notches, you should have all your notch layers in the right place for applying a colour. You've got the button band on the front with the buttons attached, and just so that I can show you, the hem facing is giving that really cut out shape with the high-low hem around the bottom. I hope that's helped you to move your shirt skills on a little bit, especially if you've been making tops with just a round neck facing and you've steered clear of anything with a collar or a button band. But actually, if you've got some of these skills, you can make a men's shirt, you can make shirt dresses, you can move into rugby shirts or polo shirts or things that have a placket on the front. So hopefully I've helped you build up some new skills that you can use when you next use a pattern.